really fortunate to have two really talented editors with us today. They each have a film premiering here at Sundance. Please help me welcome Catherine Haight and Gabriel Fleming. I lost my cushion. That's all right, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll adapt.
You don't get the fur.
Yeah, I know. Thank you both for taking the time to join us today.
Oh my God, look at that picture.
I know. Now,
it's intense.
That's literally the elephant in the room with my fat head staring at me the entire time. It's very off-putting talking to people and having myself looking back down at me. But again, like the cushion, I will adapt, and we'll be okay. Is this the first Sundance, no, not attending, but having a film at Sundance for both of you?
No, this is my third feature.
Third?
Yeah.
Okay. Gabe?
This is my second, but first as an editor. So my first, I was a location sound operator on the film Old Joy, which was here.
I love Old Joy.
See, yeah. Okay, we'll talk later.
Wow, groupies.
That was, yeah, 10 years ago, 2008.
Cool.
So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I've also had a short film and 2 TV things here.
Oh, so why didn't we do this before? I mean, clearly you guys have been around the block. You know, one of the things I didn't address when I introduced you is the projects that you've worked on that are probably more high profile. Cate, you know, Transparent for you, Polka King, Gabe, Patriots Day, Deepwater Horizon. How does the independent cinema differ from dealing with major motion picture or primetime television or very popular television, I should say? What's different about it?
They're the same and very different. It's like I always feel like artistically it's the same. And that's been my experience working in both sides, is that from a purely artistic standpoint, you're relying on all the same skills and instincts and taste, and that's what really defines you as an editor. A lot of craft aspects are different, and a lot of the politics are different. A lot of the role as an editor in editorial is so about dealing with the people that you're with, and in an indie film, it can be about the personalities of the people you're with. A lot of it is about intimacy, and a lot of people are really close to the stories, so you're dealing with that. And then the other side, you're dealing with studio executives and a lot of strange notes and a lot of monetary issues. So there's a lot of same but different.
Yeah, and I think in the more Hollywood side of things, there tend to be more cooks in the kitchen, too, or more people who you have to try and please. So that political balance of like, okay, now the director has to deal with what the producers want, and now the producers have to deal with what the studio wants. And whereas in indie, it's less of that, and hopefully it's more in the director's court.
It seems that it's more often the case that an editor, starting out, might find themselves attached to an indie project first before they've ever been on a project that's commercially successful. What was it about? You both have already been working in the industry successfully for a while now, and you have these opportunities to do indie projects. What was attractive about it?
Well, the content, of course, like the actual script and what it was that I liked about it. Yeah, and I mean, I worked a lot in bigger stuff when I was assistant editing, and so I definitely had a taste of what that world was like, the big studio movies. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's the product. It's the scripts that I like are the ones that end up tending to be smaller films.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's the mission. Because when you have a commercial product, your goal is, it's not entirely profit. And, you can't really talk about that, Hollywood, in that way. That's not, I think, the primary goal for filmmakers in Hollywood. But when you're in an indie film, you really are, this is for this particular mission. And Blindspotting was really about talking about gentrification and race. And that's not that is, the appeal of working with independent artists, is what you're getting out of it, what you're saying, and that is what you're doing. That's the primary mission.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I sort of make a point of trying to make being involved with projects that are stories about women, and that leads you to independent cinema.
But you've also got Transparent is
Sure.
a commercial product that also has a very focused.
Yeah, absolutely, because Jill works from an indie sort of point of view or attitude, or however you want to say it. She's an artist first who is lucky to have had all this experience in television that qualified her to get, I mean, she went from, we were here in 2012 with her feature Afternoon Delight, and the next, you know, she couldn't make another movie she couldn't get arrested if she wanted to make another movie, but she could have her own TV series, and her whole crew could get whatever kind of money they deserved, you know, instead of having to work for essentially nothing in features. So it only made sense for everybody.
So we were chatting earlier about, you know, what's most important to an editor's career. Is it being on a project that is commercially successful or one that's garnered critical acclaim? Where did we land on that? What's the answer?
Well, it's a complicated question because you know, for example, like editors who work on movies like Transformers, things that are big but aren't critical successes can still, like, that's a good career thing if you want to keep doing that kind of thing. But critical acclaim is very important depending on what kind of career you want to.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to pick between the two, it's critical acclaim without a doubt.
Yeah.
That interests me because that means it's a good product. I'm less concerned with, I mean, it's great if your movie does well because then people have seen it and it's out there and something that you've poured your heart into is getting an audience. That's always feels really great. But I'd much rather the critics like it and it makes $2 than it make $100 million and it's a piece of garbage.
Well, I'm sure neither of you take projects that you don't feel good about, but you know, you hear this from a lot of actors. They'll do 4 movies for the studio so they can do 1 for themselves. They take 4 projects that they know are commercially successful so they can do that one that's, you know, a lot more personal to them. Is it the same thing for an editor where you might, you know, I'm going to do blockbuster motion picture movies because that pays the bills really well, but then I also want to find time to do the more, you know, left of center, interesting personal movies like you find here at Sundance?
I mean, my goal is to toggle, because I come from an art film background, Old Joy, and like that is, and then I'm also doing these, you know, kind of blockbuster action films. So there's a big difference between those two. But in choosing projects, it's always, for me, it's not about necessarily the whole film, but it's also about the artistic process that's involved. And I really enjoy the craft of action. I really enjoy the craft and the art of visual effects and that kind of thing. So I look for that also. It's not necessarily the holistic aspect, but it's a lot about process. And that's important to me, is just as a working artist, is that the process be satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm less interested in big visual effects, action stuff. It's just that not the kind of stories that interest me personally, and I try to work on stuff that interests, stuff that I would go watch, you know. So
there was a time when there was a definite distinction between television and film in terms of the perceived quality of the work, and now I think in recent years that's just totally gone. Certainly with things like Transparent, where this is not something you would have seen, you know, 10 years ago. For you, does it even matter anymore? You know, I'll take a TV project versus a film project, or does it still come into play?
It matters in one big way. The money you can make in TV caps out really quickly.
Yeah.
In features, the sky's the limit. So if you want to keep pushing your career forward, if you want to keep getting the raises that we all deserve, you have to move into features. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
In terms of the quality, of course, I'm happy to do TV. In terms of the actual product or the duration, yeah, it makes no difference to me at all, as long as it's a good, engaging story that I like and inspires me and creatively and emotionally and spiritually in all kinds of ways. But the money factor is real. It's a
real.
huge one,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
So.
And there's a process aspect with TV and features that's different, where with TV you're doing things so much more quickly. And that can be both satisfying and frustrating. Very satisfying in that you're creating good work and you get to kind of see it more quickly. You don't have to go through these kind of crazy notes processes. But then kind of one of the satisfying things about features is that you're reinventing them all the time. Every moment is like okay, you come into a blank slate, and depending on the project, but and that can be really fun, and it's just like juggling. So there's from the process side, I think there's pluses and minuses to both. I mean, I love working in TV.
Yeah, and my experience in TV, like shows like I Love Dick and Transparent, there's a lot of juggling going on.
Right,
With the binge release, you can take a scene from episode 9 and put it in episode 2, and Jill often does that, watch the whole season and move things around and shuffle things as we're going. And
do you finish the whole season before anything airs?
Oh yeah. It all is released at once.
Yeah.
So you have to start locking picture. You're backed into your mix states, basically. So about 5 weeks out of the binge release, you have to start locking episodes.
Right. Okay.
But anyhow, we're not even talking about the race to Sundance yet.
Okay, you're right. Sorry, I got a little off track.
No, I didn't.
Back to Sundance, because that is why we're here. Well, okay, so a lot of people, couldn't dream of actually having a film make it into Sundance, and here you guys. Now I found out it's old hat to both of you. But what is that process like? You find out that you've gotten in. That doesn't mean the film is already finished and they love it and you're done. There's a lot of work, a lot of very frantic work that goes into getting the film prepped for Sundance. Would you give us a little window into what that time period's like?
Well, you find out around Thanksgiving whether you're definitely in or not. So the movie that I have here, Puzzle, we shot in May, and we actually finished the mix in early December 8th was our last mix day, and that actually is a really great schedule that we were done way ahead of time. But with both Afternoon Delight and Polka King, which I was here with, we were mixing in the beginning of January. So that's always insane when it's really down to the wire. There's no wiggle room. I mean, Afternoon Delight we shot in August, and we were here in January. So it was a really quick turnaround. But on this movie, we I think we'd already found out that we got in, and we had an additional day of shooting scheduled that we still hadn't done. So you submit the movie completely unfinished with slugs or temp stock footage and that kind of thing. So once you know, okay, we're in, it's like, all right, we really have to lock this movie and finish it. So that can be stressful, having that deadline there. But it's one that you're hoping for. Yeah. So yeah.
I like the deadline, just because it means the film's going to get done.
Yeah, that's true.
Because a lot of times without that, it's just like, oh, we didn't get into this or this. All right, okay, well, we're going to push the mix, and we're going to push this.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, every film that I've been involved in our Blindspotting was not a mad dash. We were pretty organized, but other films that have been mad dashes, it's a horrible few weeks at the end, but then you got it and you're out. I mean, I think.
And there's something incredibly rewarding too about finishing the movie and then coming here. It's like it's so fresh in your mind. I mean, it's hard to watch it again, but it's fun to see it, and it's when you're still so close to it and you're still so emotionally invested in it. To be able to come and see and celebrate it that way right away always feels really good.
Yeah, that's rare too.
Yeah,
premieres.
Yeah, exactly. You'll finish a movie and it comes out months later.
And you're already onto another project, and your mind is in a whole different space.
Exactly.
And you're like, what is this movie? Oh, right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, what are the things that are left hanging that you have to scramble to fix, between getting accepted and being here?
Clearances.
Yeah.
That was a big issue. We locked picture in late October, so we were pretty good with that. But then we have this one montage in the beginning that's mostly pulled off of YouTube. And I spent a month on that montage just because it would be like, oh, let's use this. Oh, we can't get in contact with this person. They're not responding, so we can't clear it. So it was just that process, choosing what track we were going to use. That was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for us on this project, it was the last, I'm going to say it, last piece of the puzzle. Was, I realized
it's the end of the day. You can say that.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Was the score for us. Our composer was just Dustin O'Halloran. He was working in Berlin, and I mean, we were getting stuff from him during the mix. Like, we didn't start mixing with Reel 1 because he wasn't done writing and recording reel 1 when we started the mix. So we did our reels a little bit out of order. Thankfully, by the time we got to playback, we had it all and we were able to watch it all. But so that was what we were really up against, was getting all the elements of the score. Because
Sundance has accepted you based on, we'll call it the rough cut that you presented, are there guidelines from them saying, okay, well, you can clean it up, you can make it, you can do the clearances, you can do the final mix, but you can't change the story? I mean, are you allowed to recut it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, ours was not a locked cut by any stretch that we submitted. You hope that you're halfway there at least, or you're close. But like I said, we shot additional stuff after we submitted, after we were accepted. We did.
The spirit needs to be the same.
Yeah,
okay.
and generally speaking, you're not going to reinvent a film. You know, hopefully what you're submitting is close to what you're aspiring to.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's definitely not locked by any stretch.
Is there anything about either of these films, Blindspotting or Puzzle, that something you really knew that you had learned, you know, despite what you've accomplished already? Did you knew some new technique, some new insight about the industry, some new like, oh, I should have done this different before?
I discovered fluid morph. I don't know if any of you guys.
I love fluid morph.
You know, it's funny. I was an ACE event while I was cutting this, and someone mentioned fluid morph on the stage, and I was like, I turned to my friend, I was like, wait, fluid morph? That's that. He was like, you don't know fluid morph? I do not know fluid morph.
Oh, it's a lifesaver.
And I was like, is it built into the Avid? He was like,
yes.
yeah. And I went, oh. And then I went to the cutting room the next day, and I was like, okay, how can I use this? And that was just because of an indie project, especially we had a lot of masters, and there was only a couple takes, really want to change the pacing of a lot of those masters. Yeah. So a lot of it was splitting frames and to pace it up or pace it down, and then
for the uninitiated, do you want to explain a little bit what fluid morph actually is?
So fluid morph is taking a cut and making it invisible. So you can essentially be looking at someone's face and put a cut in there, and it does a morph, a computer analysis to seam them into one piece, and that enabled being able to split frames, which means you use a performance from one side of the same shot and another side of the same shot, and you can put cuts in them and make the cuts invisible. And in Blindspotting, there must be 100
that you'll never see.
Yeah.
No, you never. Yeah. And
I use it all the time for performance. Yeah. When actors take these giant pauses, you can just take the pause out as long as they don't move their head too much, and it doesn't look like there's a cut there.
Yeah.
Are the directors aware that you have this tool at your disposal, or is it something?
Yeah, they made a lot of fun of me for that. Yeah.
Oh. Yes, and especially there'll be times when they'll be like, "Just morph it," and you're like, "No, you're on the other side of the room. Right. It doesn't. It's not like a cure-all." Yeah. But yeah, it's incredible. The thing that I used for the first time on this project was when I realized I could copy and paste keyframes in music tracks. I was like, I knew this existed and I've never used it. I don't know what version it showed up in, but
it's recent, fairly recent.
Oh man, just for when when we were replacing the temp score with the actual score, the dips and all the dialogue is all in the same spot, so you have to dip in the same places to just be able to copy and paste. It was so great.
Well, that sort of speaks to, as a working editor, how do you find the time to learn these new things? I mean, we're coming out with new versions of Media Composer all the time, and they're slipping all these little new features in. And I'll talk to editors that have been using Avid for a long time, just like you said, like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what that is.
It's always someone, like I have this way of doing selects that I try and have my assistants organized, and one of them, I was looking at what he was doing, and I was like, wait, what are you doing with those colors there? And he's like, well, to organize them, I made each angle a different color. And that was like, oh my God, how have I not? But it's just learning about it from the people around you, and that they've done it, and you're like, oh, you watch someone actually work. Like that's how
exactly. It's actually what I love about working in TV is that you work with other editors, and there's a big team of people. And so you'll just learn different bells and whistles, and you'll be standing behind someone. It's always that. It's like, wait, what did you just do? You know, and like.
Are they generally open about sharing, or do they didn't like?
Oh,
No.
Oh no, always. Everybody loves like, and I love when I'm the one who someone's behind is like, what did you just do? I'm like, oh, let me teach you something. It's always fun.
Well, it often seems like assistants are usually the ones that are closer to the newer innovations and up to date on all the.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a small update, I actually try and read the release notes.
You're the one.
The bullet points that tell you what they've added. It's like this long. It takes 2 minutes. So if it's something, most of the time I'm like, yeah, I don't care, whatever. I don't understand what that means. But a lot of times, if it's something that like actually has to do with the way an editor interfaces, as opposed to some back-end thing or how you import media or whatever, that stuff matters less to me. But.
And I just learned how to read the release notes.
Well, they're bullets. Okay, here's the thing. At the top of them, there's bullets that just give you like the one-liner about what. Yeah. So you can just glance at that and go, oh, I'm interested in that, and read about it.
A huge part of editing, as I've learned from talking to people like yourselves, is not so much the craft of putting these together, but how you manage the whole project, how you organize everything. Like you were just talking about, Gabe, with, hey, what are you doing? Why are you color coding that way? Are there certain things that you do on every project where I'm going to set up my bins and my scenes, and do you have sort of your go-to set of parameters?
I think that's pretty standard the first day with the editor goes with the assistant and says, this is how I like it. Here's a template. Do this and this and this and this and this, and then they'll do it, and then you give them notes on what they're doing, and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you work with an assistant several times, they'll know what you need, and it's a wonderful resource to have somebody who you don't have to explain it to. And I find that the way I work is the way editors I assisted worked. Like you adapt as an assistant, adopt whatever it is that editors you've worked with a lot do, and that becomes your way of doing things.
Because that is the first role for many people breaking into the business, the role of the assistant. What is it you look for in a good assistant editor?
That's a complicated question.
Thank you.
I look for somebody who wants to cut.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's the primary thing.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much because I want them to cut for me, I mean, of course, I'd like that to happen some, but I like that the ambition and drive that comes along with that, and somebody who's just striving to move forward and grow and learn, and who I can turn to and say, what do you think of this scene? And has an opinion and probably knows the footage maybe even better than I do, because I work with the script program basically always. And so they've done that for me. They've organized, put the footage in the script.
The script syncs.
Yeah, sorry.
And for those of you that haven't seen it, it's out there in the lobby of the Delta. So you can see that firsthand.
And they've organized and set that up for me, so they know the footage pretty well too. So it's a great resource to have somebody who wants to engage on that creative level with you, as opposed to just being a technician who's organizing and exporting for you, you know.
By the way, for assistants who want to be a career assistant, like that is great. Of course. I think that really, for some people, that's the path. Yeah. And that they really want to do, and you can go quite far. I've worked with some assistants who are amazing, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it is an art and craft unto itself, certainly.
Oh, yeah. Especially on those huge movies where you're like running an army, basically.
Yeah, some of those Marvel pictures, the number of assistants goes on forever, and they all have some special, unique aspect of the cut that they're working on.
And there's a couple people who have it all in their head.
Yeah. And
it's incredible to watch.
Now, how did both of you get your start in the business? What was the first project that really got you on your way?
After I studied film at UC Santa Cruz, and right after that I got an internship in a film called Desperate Measures. This was in 1996. And it was Michael Keaton and Andy Garcia. It was an $80 million film, which was a huge budget at the time. And I started as a PA in the editorial room, and then was lucky enough to become the apprentice editor. And I worked on that film, and then saw the assistants that I was working with. And ever since Avid came along, the nature of the cutting room changed, where assistants weren't in the room with the editor. So they weren't seeing the day-to-day editing process. And they had been working for a long time and weren't cutting. And I just kind of said, this is not my path. I want to cut. So I left the industry and I went to San Francisco and I started editing corporate videos. And I did that for 6 or 7 years. I did that a while. And then with the strategy of keeping cutting, but like moving towards what I wanted to do. So I was doing corporate videos and indie stuff, and then I did reality television in Hollywood for a long time, which was a great experience and I recommend to any editor to do. And then some scripted television and then indie and Hollywood stuff. That was my path. It was kind of like a little bit of an outsider. So I'm actually a little less aware of the inside Hollywood system and how cutting rooms work. And I've only really learned that over the past, 10 years, I guess. But yeah.
Don't you, Kate?
Yeah, after I went to college, I went to Occidental in Los Angeles, studied film there. And then, I started out as a production assistant on a show for Animal Planet. And I was not in editorial, and I didn't know that I was interested specifically in editing. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And they needed someone to help start logging all the help log all the footage that was coming back, and it was a promotion. So I said yes, absolutely. And so we were logging in Avid, and so I was on that show for about a year. And then, sorry, someone just walked in. And,
it happens. People come in.
And by the end of it, I was an assistant editor. The assistant on that show took me under her wing and really taught me Avid from the ground up. I had used it a tiny bit in school, but I really didn't know. Back when it was like AVR 77 was the high, that. I remember when the drives went from 8 to 16 gigs, and that was massive.
We try not to date ourselves with those things we have.
But I went the TV path. I started assisting in TV. So I actually never worked in a film cutting room. I had peers who were at the time, but I was in TV. So I was an assistant. And then I assisted on features as well. I was an assistant for about 10 years. And then finally, both paths of cutting those short films for free, that paid off for me because I met Jill Soloway because I cut her short film for free on the weekends. We met through a mutual friend. So that paid off. But the first job I got hired on as an editor, I was recommended by an assistant by an editor I had assisted earlier, Alan Baumgarten. And that was the pilot for Girls, which we didn't really know. Wow. We knew it, I know, it was ridiculous. We knew it was good. We didn't know what we had, like that it was going to turn into this crazy zeitgeisty thing. But and after I cut that pilot, I went back to assisting. So I bounced back and forth for a little bit before I finally fully made the leap to editor when I cut on the first season of New Girl. And since then, I've just been cutting.
So far I've been asking all the questions. If anybody here has a question for Cate or Gabe about the art of editing or being at Sundance, it's okay. You can stand up, wave. Yes.
So when the music guy was not delivering, did you try to line up somebody else just in case he missed, or did you?
Oh, no. It wasn't that he wasn't delivering. It was that the schedule was so tight. He delivered the most wonderful score, and his work was incredible. So no, we were never. There was a chance, like maybe we'll have a couple temp cues that are still in there, but we always knew we would get there. We just were really cutting it close. But no, it was never that he wasn't delivering. Yeah.
In the back, I think it was a question.
Yeah, I think I'm just fascinated by your career choices, as far as you were a PA once, I'm executive assistant, those both kind of blend sometimes, and how you ended up in editing. And myself personally, I'm an EA, but I'm also a dance choreographer. I have a dance background, and so I have a creative kind of streak, and so I'm open to other creative endeavors. And so I think sometimes we box ourselves in into I've done this skill set for 10 years, and so I can't get to I don't know how to get to the next point if you're in your 30s. And so I guess, but I know that if you're professional and punctual and show up and you want it, and there's that tenacity and the passion that will fuel it and kind of create the path sort of and get yourself there in the relationship. So I guess maybe if you could speak to someone that's in her 30s that's considering a different path, or as it relates to kind of how you went from PA to editor.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to really want it, and you have to do the work. I mean, you have to make a choice. I'm going to be an editor. And even if you have other interests in your life that might be pulling you in other ways, it's fun. I think they have to, professionally at least, they have to more become hobbies than, you can't, like I feel like you have to make one choice. I'm going to pursue editing. And if you really are, if you do the work, if you're, like you said, you're prompt, you show up, you're smart, you put your head down, but you also have to tell everybody what it is that you want and get the word out there and socialize with other people who are in the industry. And it's funny, I was actually having a conversation recently about how working on a TV show, like if you're an assistant and you want to become the editor, it's really important that you actually come out and sit and have lunch with everybody instead of saying, oh, I have work to do, I'm going to stay at my Avid and eat.
Lunch
because
is the most important
the
time.
lunches are when people learn what your creative passions are, what kind of stuff you're interested in cutting, who you are as a person and as an artist, and all of this stuff that makes people know you and trust you and then want to recommend you for stuff. So even if you think like, I really do have work to do and it's better that I sit down and be the good assistant and be at the desk and do the export or whatever it is, long term, it might not be, because then people don't get to know you in the same way. So you just really have to go after it and put yourself out there.
I also think as an artist, you kind of have to abandon the idea that there's a deadline or that there are stage posts in life.
Totally.
Like it's one of those things you just need to embrace the idea that you could be 75 and you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to write a novel. You know, that's it, with no experience of it, and that's part of the joy of being an artist is we don't have to conform to those societal ideas of you have to be this then.
Yeah.
You're right, like I'm sure for a second to kind of pile on, like you mentioned like I don't know how many years in corporate video editing. Like do you ever think that like you were gonna return to the creative streak of like Hollywood or whatever? Yeah. I mean from a personal experience, I'm maybe not the best because I kind of like I was an editor since I was like 9, so like it's been a clear path. But I do, I'm also a writer and director, and that's something that I made a choice at a certain point, essentially not to pursue as an economic goal. But one of the nice things about doing that is knowing that I will still do that, but I don't have to pursue it as I don't have to like, oh my God, this is not happening on this time. What's going to happen? And so that was very freeing. And but to pursue something economically, I think it is a good idea to choose that as what you're going to be doing and just like go for that for the period in your life that you want to pursue that. Yeah,
I mean, when I was in my mid-20s and assisting, because I started assisting when I was like 22, 23, I was like, I'm going to be an editor by the time I'm 30. 30 sounds like a good number. I was not 30 when I started cutting. I was well over 30, when I was fully only employed as an editor. Obviously, I cut shorts and did it, but like getting employed. So you have to, don't put those sorts of restrictions.
30 always does seem to be, for whatever reason, that imaginary benchmark.
I know, but when you're 20, you don't know better. Like, exactly. I was just young and was like, 30. No, I was not 30.
Let's make it 50 sounds good now. We'll go with 50. Exactly.
I always like to think about David Bowie and his artistic path. I don't know, he's really inspired me in the way that he shifted so much over his career, and that I think about him a lot as a model.
Yes, may we all be David Bowie.
I know.
That is something to aspire to.
Well, building on the concept of lunch.
Always happy to talk about lunch.
I don't know what that meant.
I will talk about lunch any day.
Okay, so not on the concept of lunch, the concept of the politics of the edit room. And
tender greens. I always tender greens. So, I'm so sick of tender greens. Yeah.
Well, maybe talk about lunch. Being able to speak your mind and knowing what your comfort zone is with the director, with your colleagues. It's, as you said, Cate, if you're not vocal and you're not putting yourself out there, you're not going to really move forward with any great speed. But at the same time, you also have to understand your role in the greater picture. How do you know when's the right time to stand your ground and say, listen, I don't think we're making the right creative choice here, or it seems like a very delicate balance to have
It
to
is, and I
find.
mean, that's instinct and social skills too, more than anything. Like, you know how you have to learn how to read people, you know. But it is, I had this conversation this morning with one of the editors who's staying in the condo with me about how do you know when to stop pushing a director if you feel really strongly about something. And there is no easy answer to that. It's different with each one and your relationship with them. But I say that I really try and you do your pass to the movie, we're taking time out, and you're like, what about this? Like, no, never. Okay. Second pass through, you're like, no, maybe next time. You're like, okay, that's better. Third time through, they're like, all right, try it. It's not going to work, but try it. And then you try it, and sometimes they're like, of course you were right. It's better without it. Or no, put it back. But you just have to be patient. But then if they're like, no, I really don't want to take it out. Okay, once you've said your piece and it's clear how you feel, and you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Know the ones that are not worth fighting over and the ones that the hill you're willing to die on.
I think there's the role of the editor and a lot of the other artists working in film is as the caretaker of the vision of the director. Mm-hmm. So it means that the director might not always have the best sense of the path to their vision. And you have to kind of judge, like, okay, is this a place where, like, my opinion in this, is this my vision, or is this my interpretation of the director's vision that they're not seeing because of some sort of personal thing or attachment to a shot or that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So that's a question I try and ask myself all the time. And then the other thing is, like, it happens so often that I will have a strong opinion about something and that they won't want to do it. And the more I work, the more I just have to be like, there's a good chance I'm wrong. There's a very good chance I'm wrong. So I'm going to push it a little bit to a certain point, to like maybe try it. But at a certain point, the director does have the best access almost all the time to the director's vision. So you kind of have to trust them.
Yeah, but I do think it's fair to say there are times when they don't.
Yeah.
When
a lot of times. Yeah.
When it's because directors have so much at stake, and they were there on set, and they saw the scene in one way in their head, and sometimes you really have to help them get to. I know you saw the scene this way, and just because it's not playing the way you thought it should, doesn't mean it's not good in its own right, and help them retrain their way of seeing it and see that this is a great scene that is different from what you set out to shoot, but it's still great, and we shouldn't cut it out altogether because of that or whatever.
Right.
And so much of it is about language too, and how you're how the way you're expressing your opinion about, not saying like, I think this is like this, but saying, do you think this is a little like this?
Yeah.
There's super subtle ways of communicating that will open to directors.
You're still being collaborative. You're not
right.
Yeah.
We're trying not to be too forceful and trying to include someone in it.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
So many. Yeah, it's a conversation, and it's like directors' personalities can be very different, and
yeah, and it's something that I'm still constantly learning. There'll be times when I'm like, shit, I just crossed the line. They're like, no, I'm sorry. It's different with everyone who you work with. It's like anything in life. You just have to learn when to say, okay, I'm done talking now.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
So it sounds like you both had experience in reality. I've been an assistant reality and documentary for the last 5 years. And could you speak a little bit on how you were able to achieve your transition to scripted?
Yeah, I wasn't really in
tough.
reality, so yeah, you should talk.
Whoa, I get this question a lot.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have a good answer. And everyone that I know who's transitioned from reality into scripted has had their own really unique path. Mine was super unique. I won't go into it because it's a long story, but it was random opportunity. I like to say it's opportunity and preparation, right? So I had already done a lot of scripted independent work. So I was familiar with it already and knew how to do it, and I just kind of got thrown into a situation that gave me the opportunity to show that I could do that. But it's not reproducible. That what I went through is not reproducible, nor is it reproducible for many of the other people that I know that made that transition. I think that one of the things that as editors that we should do, because there's a big bias in the industry against reality television in general, that I've tried to make it a point of just like people with reality backgrounds, like this is a positive mark on your work history, because it is a really challenging editing task. Some of the most challenging editing I've ever done has been reality television, and to shift that bias, I hope we can do that. But I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
yeah.
I was just going to say the one thing that I have seen replicated several times from people specifically trying to make the switch from reality to scripted is that they're willing to assist in scripted.
Yeah.
If you are in the union and you get in somehow, you can assist in scripted, and people will give you a chance in that way. And then you've got your foot in the door in the scripted world, and you can get to know editors and get to know the ropes and the workflow and be like, oh, this is how it's done. And look, it's not rocket science, but there are small things that are different that you do need to know. But the odds of getting hired from being a reality editor to a scripted editor, it's really low. It's really hard. Whereas you can get in by assisting and get to know people in the scripted world and then move your way up to cutting.
And if you've got experience cutting reality,
Yeah.
in that assistant position in scripted, you are in a great position to just jump in.
Exactly. You're used to already working with producers behind you, sitting behind you, dealing with notes, all of that stuff that you've already got under your belt. You can apply and you'll move up quickly. I've seen it happen many times.
But one more thing, it can be frustrating.
Yes, of course.
Because you've been cutting and you've also been making, good
The
money,
money,
because you make, reality editors often make more than scripted television editors. And you're going into a situation where you're making a lot less money, and scripted moves more slowly than reality in terms of upward mobility. So you can suddenly go into being an assistant for a couple years in scripted before you get that shot.
Patience is key. I mean, it's like anything. You have to want it and work hard, and be patient. But it's totally doable. I've seen many people do it.
So there you go. Advice direct from the pros. That's what we do here. Cate, Gabe, best of luck with the films at Sundance. It's awesome you both got in. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all for being here for this presentation.